Hi there. So, welcome everybody from both sides of the room. My name is Mary McCarthy and I'm a career consultant at the Career Service and just delighted to be part of this event. And my colleague Brenda is here and my colleague David is here helping out. But I'd like to just get started by welcoming you and really thanking you. I think time is a very precious resource and sort of limited commodity, I think, in our lives. We notice more and more. So it's a really big thing. I think just being willing to set time aside, give something back, and really share your story with others is I'm just very, very, very grateful that you're doing that, and on behalf of UCC. I know that certainly from the point of view of career stories, being inspired by others, hearing the shared experiences and lived experiences of others is probably one of the most powerful. Pause.
Good evening, everyone, and just to remind you once again, Career Service are offering you the chance to see how you can make a difference with your postgrad studies by meeting our Postgrad Alumni Panel. That's now at the Dora Alumni Room on the 4th floor. Thank you.
So I think, hearing the lived experience of others is one of the most real and profound, and often it's a milestone event for people. I think it's probably, and a lot of research and evidence shows that too. So I think not only are you making a difference in the world with your postgrad and your qualifications and expertise, but hopefully you're going to make a difference to other people's lives as well. So thank you very much for coming. So I suppose the running order this evening is, for the first part, we have 6 panellists here, alumni, who are going to share their I suppose, career path, their story. And also, we've given you some questions to think about. It doesn't mean that you haven't or have done your homework. They're just questions for you to focus on. And we're going to encourage all of you to ask questions, whatever questions spontaneously come to you. Please don't hold back. Often we're a little bit shy asking questions in a group, but I would ask you to, and I'll be asking you questions as well. So maybe we might start. The best plans don't work out. I had a nice personal image, an intro for each one of you, and somehow it just didn't save. But we will go with, I think, just asking each of you to briefly introduce yourselves, maybe your degree, where you're working, something about yourselves, and we'll get started, if that's okay. Yeah? So would you like to start here?
Hello. Hi, I'm Paulina, and I did my undergrad and my master's in UCC. So I did a microbiology undergrad, and I did a molecular cell biology with bioinnovation master's. It's a bit of a mouthful. And I'm currently working in Janssen as a technical scientist.
Hi, this is Vanessa. I did my master's here in UCC in International Public Policy and Diplomacy. I'm originally from Ecuador, and my undergrad was in business because, to be honest, I wanted to go something very broad because I didn't know what to do at the beginning. Now I'm currently working as corporate affairs manager at Green Rebel, and yes, I've kind of building my career here in Ireland. So, thank you.
Hi everyone. I'm Siobhan Kangataran. I studied law here at undergrad back in 2003. This is my 20th year since my graduation, which is kind of terrifying. And then I came back, and despite my best efforts, I tried to avoid coming back to law, but I came back and did a master's in law in 2009, 2010. And now I've managed to somehow turn that interest in law into a role at Munster Technological University, so the competition just down the road. I am the Equality, Diversity and Inclusion Manager there, and I'm delighted to be here to share a bit more of my story.
Hi everybody, my name is Eileen Collins. I'm the Inclusion Health Advanced Nurse Practitioner at the Mercy Hospital, and I completed my Master's in Advanced Nursing Practice here at UCC with a background of general nursing, psychotherapy in cognitive behavioural therapy, lots of travelling and backpacking, which I think was a big part of my education and being a person as well, working in infectious diseases and homeless services in London. And I'll tell you more in a bit.
Thanks. Hi, my name's Ciara. I did my undergraduate in DCU in global business, so I kept it broad as well. So I graduated there in 2016 and went into management consulting. So I worked for a few years and travelled, and then in 2020 I decided to come back and study, and I did the Masters in Cooperatives, Agri-Food and Sustainable Development. And as part of my research project there, I did it with a consultancy based in Kinsale called Change by Degrees, and I've been working with them since, so I'll be there 2 years in March.
Hi, my name is Jennifer Egan. I did both my undergraduate degree and master's here in UCC. I did a Bachelor of Arts in Geography and French Language and Literature. I then took a year out because I didn't really know exactly what I wanted to do, and I then came back and did a master's, did the M-Plan here in UCC, a master's in planning and sustainable development, and I graduated in that in 2019, and since then I've been working in as a transport planner. So yeah, that's me.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I mean, I might get the ball rolling by, I suppose the title, Making a Difference, with your postgrad is, I think it's more and more an important topic. We've got a lot of challenges in the world and in society. We have lots of issues, and I think more and more, and I notice more and more undergrads and final years, they want their values, they're starting to question and think about things, and they do want to make a difference, and they want to make a meaningful difference. And I guess I'm really interested to hear, maybe just throw it out to the group, what, how that kind of motivates or influences you, how that drives you in terms of maybe why you selected the postgrad that you did. And I suppose linked to that, what are the kind of rewards and challenges of the role that you're in? Anyone like to start? I have it here. Great.
So working in science is, I feel like working there in general is just extremely rewarding, because being a part of a really big global company like Janssen, which is a family of Johnson & Johnson, they really focus about the patient. Now, it's kind of cliche to say, oh, we're curing cancer, but there is treatment out there where we are doing a lot of clinical trials and commercial products that do really kind of focus on cancer treatments or chronic illnesses, and it's the development of those drugs. And I suppose working in a company where the values and the core values of the company match with your own definitely is a reward of itself. Now, I chose my master's because I loved my undergrad degree in microbiology, but I did prefer the molecular side of things a little bit more, and getting the opportunity to do the master's as well included placement, where I was actually based in Janssen, and I've been fortunate enough to keep working there and keep making that difference.
So, my primary focus has been always environmental policy and climate action, and now energy policy. So for me, there are clear targets, 2030, 2050, in the government plan at a world level as well after the Paris Agreement, and all those agreements that are international, therefore the international part of the master's that I wanted to do. And it's very rewarding because as well, you're working for the future, that you're going to leave something tangible there. So that is really attractive, and I really wanted to do that as well, like as part of my personal reward, to feel that I was contributing to a better world out there. As for the challenges that I faced as well, is like sometimes this takes time. You might not see much of development, but you know that deep down you are contributing, you are talking to people, you are engaging with multiple people who have the same vocation. So that is challenging and rewarding at the same time. And it's been great. It's been a great progress to see it advancing. It's great to see that we're all pushing the boat in the same direction.
Can I ask as a curiosity, what is Green Rebel? What do they do?
Sure. So Green Rebel is at the very beginning, let's say, of the energy supply chain. So Energy Rebel is a company of data acquisition, and that data is then passed to wind developers for renewable energy farms. So we are at the very beginning, as I said, the energy supply chain. We provide the data, we analyze the data, we give reports, and those reports end up being wind farms. And those wind farms are clean energy. So
I was kind of always an aspiring activist, and I was trying to boycott Nestle because my mum had told me about their illegal marketing practices in developing countries. So I always had this plan to change the world or save the world somehow. But after a week's work experience, I realized I didn't want to be a solicitor. So I wasn't quite sure how I could become a lawyer, but without being a solicitor. And I was told that law was a strong foundational degree, so just do it. And I remember being in the Boole and being told it's a strong foundational degree. So I was like, okay, well, UCC say this is a good basis. But when I finished the degree, I realised that I was kind of burnt out from doing the degree. I hadn't availed of the supports that were available at UCC. I kind of thought those were for other people, not for me. I didn't actually ask for help. And I just needed to get away from it. And I didn't realise as well, to do black holes, you needed a lot of financial support. Education really is a privilege, and those professional services educations are definitely a privilege, and I didn't have access to that. So over the next few years, I did try and do anything but law, but I found that law was actually a barrier for a while because people were so impressed, they were a bit intimidated by it. I'd apply for jobs and they'd say, oh, but you have a law degree, so why would you want to work in this entry-level accounting role? Surely you must want to go on and do your black holes. And I was like, no, I want to do this job. I swear, I want to make a difference. I want to just start somewhere and then I can move on. And so I looked into every other option. And so I'd say even if you've studied law as your undergraduate, you still have permission to look at every option. But in my case, I ended up coming full circle. And thanks to Professor Louise Crowley here in UCC, when I reached out to her, she encouraged me to do the LLM in e-law. It was a new master's at the time, which looked at technology and the law as it relates to online information. But I did not realise, it's only looking backwards, you connect the dots. It's only after I moved to London and people were so impressed that I had a master's in law. It was no longer intimidating. It was now really impressive that I had this master's in law. And it really opened up doors for me. Got sucked into kind of a corporate progression. But the desire, that little childhood activist, that desire to make a difference was always there. And actually, it was only really in the last few years I had a kind of a racial awakening in May 2020, me being a woman of colour in a predominantly white space, looking around and realising that a lot of my friends weren't reacting to the Black Lives Matter protests in the same way that I was. They weren't feeling as personally affected by it. And that childhood activist came back with a bang. I said, right, I've got a law degree, I've got a master's in law, surely there's got to be a way I can harness this towards making a difference in the world. So I started volunteering on every diversity and inclusion working group I could. I started writing and blogging and researching and just offering help wherever I could. And I'd already been actively involved in women's networks, challenging sexism and gender equality in the workplace. The activists never went too far. So when in May 2020, May 2021, I was able to turn all of this into a role of working in equality, diversity and inclusion at MTU. It felt like kind of all my dreams had come true. I got to come home to Ireland, got to be back seeing my family, but I get the permission and excuse to talk about race and ethnicity nearly every day. I get to learn about issues that either affect me directly or indirectly, and I get to make a difference with the staff and students around me. So I never would have thought I've ended up here, but those foundational degrees apparently do bring you somewhere eventually.
So I'm going to work a bit backwards from first the challenges. So one of the challenges that I work with in my role as an inclusion health ANP is that the perceptions of people, I suppose inclusion health includes many people in society. I don't say groups or communities because unless you personally identify as part of a group or a community, I prefer not to use that label. But day by day, it's mostly people affected by homelessness or addiction, often both together, or people who have spent time in prison, maybe also an undocumented refugee or migrant. And I won't go into the full list, but again, day by day, it's mostly people affected by homelessness or addiction in hospitals. So, but they're people that are may experience marginalisation and prejudice in society, and healthcare settings are part of society. So that's one of the challenges. But in terms of we know that in Ireland there's lots of interest in developing more advanced nursing practice roles. And in order to be an A&P, you need to complete an accredited master's, including clinical training as well as very rigorous critical thinking training and research. So conveniently, UCC is the university associated with the Mercy Hospital. I could have, I suppose, chosen maybe somewhere else to do the training that would have been easier. But I think UCC, it's very highly, I'm not here to plug UCC, but the School of Nursing and Midwifery, it is very highly ranked. And again, the training in terms of the research process was really, really rigorous. So it was tough doing it all, working full time and pandemic and all the rest that goes with it. But when you get through the other end of it, there is something about completing your master's somewhere that is, well respected, and is well respected and highly ranked because of how the training and the education is done. The rewards of my work really are working with people that are my patients really highly resilient. So on the surface of it in society, people that are affected by homelessness or addiction may be perceived to be people who are chaotic or who choose to be engaging in this life by choice, but almost everybody that I work with as a patient, they're people that have come through very significant childhood adversity and experience prejudice directly or indirectly on a daily basis. So I suppose I feel fortunate to be in the presence of people who remind me of what resilience really is.
So I suppose it took me a few years to kind of figure out what masters I wanted to do. I graduated in 2016 and had always been interested in sustainability and in my undergrad in social enterprise, and I couldn't find a direct career path, I suppose, in Dublin. I'd been studying in the States, and when I came back there weren't any graduate programmes. There didn't seem to be that many entry-level jobs unless you maybe had an environmental science background. So I spent a few years looking, and I found a lot of kind of corporate sustainability masters, and I just felt it was my undergraduate again with sustainability tagged on at the start. So I kept looking for a few years and travelled, and while I was abroad, the bushfires kind of broke out in Australia while I was living there, and then COVID hit. So I moved home and was unemployed and went back to looking at masters, and I saw the MSc in Cooperatives, Agri-Food and Sustainable Development in UCC, which I think it was only in its third year kind of up and running. And I was really drawn to that because I suppose I'd worked in management consulting, which was working with different companies. It was project-based. It was working with lots of different clients. And I really enjoyed that. So that drew me to that master's because there was a 6-month kind of practical internship. And I knew I learned by doing as well, so that it would kind of suit my interests and how I like to learn. And then through working with Change by Degrees, who I met on my master's, I kind of found the match of working with clients and projects, but working in sustainability. And it's been really rewarding because I suppose every project we're working on, it's to help make that business more sustainable or to educate their employees on what they can do at home and in work to make a difference. So I think just personally, it's kind of great job satisfaction, and I suppose each day, not every day is a brilliant day, but you do feel like you're kind of making a difference or helping someone else to make a difference. So
Same, I kind of didn't always know I wanted to be a planner, and kind of ashamedly I didn't really know that planning was a profession that you could get into. And it wasn't really until I chose to do an elective geography module in my final year of my undergrad that I discovered planning. The Centre for Planning, Education and Research run a module that basically, it's an introductory module to planning. So, and up until then, I didn't really know what direction I was going to go into after my degree. I knew I had a real graw for human and social and cultural geography and studying about places and our environment and how we interact with place, but I wasn't quite sure how to transfer that into a career. And so when I learned about planning and the masters that they offer here in the M-Plan, it just seemed like an ideal fit, and there was real potential to have, I guess, a real impact on the world around me in a very positive and tangible way. And I guess in terms of, it is a very rewarding profession to get into because it's very concerned with, making the world a better place without sounding too cheesy. And the work that I do now as a transport planner, most of the projects that I work on are with local authorities across Ireland on transport-related projects. So that might be developing plans and policies to promote sustainable transport, or designing walking and cycling infrastructure. But whatever the project is, the main objective is really fundamentally rooted in the want to improve the quality of living for people and for our environment as well. So, for example, in infrastructure projects, we look at improving connectivity and making our streets more accessible and safer and more vibrant for people of all ages and all abilities to be able to participate in their community, because we probably don't even think of things like footpaths and cycle lanes and crossing points and all the rest of it, but they can have a real impact on how we move around and get about and go to school and go to work. And it can be the difference between someone being able to live independently or being isolated in their home. So on a local level, you can have a real impact on people's quality of living. But then on a more global scale, I think as well, there's a huge shift toward promoting sustainable travel and transport and low carbon forms of transport, particularly in the context of climate, the climate crisis and congestion in our cities and air pollution. All of these things have a really negative impact on our own health and that of the planet. And so working as a transport planner and working to address these issues is really, really quite rewarding. Yeah.
Wow, thank you. That's some really inspiring stories there. I'd encourage anyone to ask any question. So anyone? Mics, thanks. Anybody? Yes, great.
First of all, I wanted to thank each and every one of you. Really valuable for me, hearing from all of you. I'm in the first stages or the second semester of the MA in anthropology, and I'm just curious if anyone can speak about, at this stage of my scholarship, starting to reach out or network, thinking about places to work.
I might step in there for a moment before you do.
Sure.
And just, I guess, remind you again of the career service, because that's where we're always learning new things and new sectors and new. So we are, really would be very happy to sit down and explore all of that with you as well. But I still hand over to you.
So I actually, because I'm a foreigner, I came and everything was new. So that was a plus and also a disadvantage, but mostly a plus for me. Networking is key, and I think that reaching out, and yes, first of all, UCC services are fantastic. Like from the very beginning, I've had a wonderful experience with the International Students Office. Then there are specific spaces like UCC societies that you take part and you start to engage with lecturers, with people with your same interests. Then certain masters, and I'm not sure about anthropology, but you can connect with the lecturers and also with the work placements and take advantage of that. I had also like a great experience with my work placement. My boss, who was my boss during my work placement, is back to being my boss now. So, but in the meantime, I also had like a couple of different jobs where I grew up. So, and how I ran into her again was because I was at a networking event and we were working in a workshop. She was representing A, I was representing B, and we got to connect again. And then Cork as well is a small but also big town where you can run into the same people and continue the conversations that you left probably on hold at the beginning. And it's there is an opportunity there for you to stay connected, to see where else you want to go, and how you can rely on those people, on those contacts that you've made. And last, as I said, like, yes, UCC services, but where I was going with that. Yeah, well, as I said, the spaces that you have, not only societies, but the events. I wanted to touch, like, this type of events are a fantastic opportunity for you to reach out, for you to see people, or for you to see other professionals. And I know, because I've experienced those opportunities here, that events are a major player in UCC services. So, anyone else? Yeah.
I might speak to that as well a little bit with the networking. So even if you're an introvert and might not always feel like, to put yourself out there that much, there's always, with the new technologies and everything, there's always the space of like reaching out to people online. And LinkedIn is a fantastic platform where you can literally just add as many people as you want. And even if you add your friends or people that you work with at the moment or your lecturers, and then a person who is relevant to what you're searching for comes up and you reach out and send them a message, it's as simple as that. Just even sending out that message, the worst they can say is no. Definitely putting yourself out there. I mean, in my undergraduate, we were not fortunate to have a placement. So it was up to us to kind of put ourselves out there and do placement if we wanted to. Now, we did have a placement in our master's, which was fantastic, and it was an amazing way to connect with people in different industries. But yeah, definitely events, and honestly, having a strong CV and having great help from the UCC services and even professionals online, even Googling things and just getting a great idea from like the internet out there, because it doesn't matter essentially what it is that you do as long as you put yourself out there and you have a strong sense of self. I definitely think that's what kind of makes you stand out.
Yeah, highly recommend just having your LinkedIn up to date, even if you don't choose to be active on it, but because people will Google you and then you want to choose, you want to dictate what they find. And definitely asking for help. I wish I had asked for more help when I was at UC undergrad level. I definitely asked more at master's. So it's amazing how helpful people are when you just let them know that you want that support. But an unusual one I would recommend is, in hindsight, choose the activities you're genuinely interested in. So yes, go to the networking events and so on, but if you choose something you're genuinely interested in, whether it's a club or a society, and you meet like-minded people and you happen to mention that you're interested in X, Y, and Z, they will think of you, and it is all about who you know. And I say this having played rugby here at UCC. I was so scared at undergrad I didn't play, but when I came back from my master's, I was like, this is my last chance, I'm going to play rugby. And I had an amazing time, an amazing group of women, just a wonderful experience. When I moved to London, I played touch rugby on Clapham Common. It's through that game of touch rugby I played on Clapham Common that I got a job managing a £10 million fit out of 40,000 square foot of commercial space on the Battersea Power Station development. Like, that would not have happened. I would not have planned that, but that is one of those beautiful serendipitous moments that because I was in the right place, speaking to the right person, the right thing happened. So you can be strategic, but you can also be a little bit organic and spend time with people doing things you already enjoy, and good things might happen.
Thank you. There's even a name for that. It's called planned happenstance.
Oh,
There's a theory around it.
Yes, I did that on purpose.
It's probably one of the things that creates the most opportunities for people. It's being open and flexible, curious, being willing to kind of step out of your comfort zone, be in the right place at the right time with that serendipity and synchronous kind of these wonderful moments, and things happen like that. So many jobs and careers have started like that. Yeah.
Hi, so as someone who just finished their environmental sciences undergraduate, first I'd like to say I'm really pleased and excited to hear that sustainability is still something that's very important to all of you in the work you do, especially considering it's so multidisciplinary. I worry about losing that spark, and it's very inspiring to see that's still something people care about so far along in their careers. Also, thank you for giving us your time today. I wanted to ask specifically Vanessa, I'm also an immigrant to this country and I'm new to Cork, and I wanted to ask if you could elaborate a bit farther on what you found most useful in understanding both the social layout of Cork, the sort of planning systems in Cork, things specific to your industry, whether that be like speaking to the people you worked with, whether that be social, any online resources. Thank you.
Oh, thanks. I'm delighted with that question. It takes me to memory lane. Well, first of all, the master's that I did was super helpful because I got to understand the Irish system by reading and by doing my assignments. But at the same time, I've been a person who looks things with perspective. So I wanted to understand the international part, like what's happening at a higher level around the world, and then kind of land into, okay, now I'm in Ireland, what's happening here, and how can I compare it to somewhere else? So comparison is one of the key things that I did. To understand, to see what's the difference. The second one was not being ashamed, like of asking a stupid question. First of all, I know that everybody says that there are no stupid questions, but there are no stupid questions. If you don't know something, and we have that advantage when we're foreigners, to say like, okay, but what does an MEP do? Like, it doesn't matter because it's foreigner to us as well. So asking the questions, asking for the support of your colleagues, of your lecturers, of your classmates, and that was very, very helpful as well. And I think that the greatest part as well here in Cork, as I said, is that you get to connect with people and you meet those people at different events or for a different purpose, but you're still connected to them. So yes, you said like LinkedIn is great, and I've remained in touch with them. I actually went downstairs and I was looking for my former colleagues because I did work in UCC after my master's. So I was like, where are they? And they were in the School of Computer Science, completely different to me. But I got to say, hi, I'm here, how you been? And they were like, oh, we should have a coffee. So those little connections are very important and are very appreciated as well by Irish people who I'm just so happy to be here because I've grown into an Irish family now. So,
thank you. I might intervene. I please hold on to your questions for one moment, but I'm aware of time passing because we have a whole other group of our PhD alumni are here as well. And I guess I wanted to ask and kind of pull together, the subject of making a difference, and of course the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. I don't have every one of them learned off, even though I have them up on my wall and I kind of aspire to them. But it is about making the world a better place, a sustainable place that lasts for our grandchildren, our great-grandchildren, and not just about our small lives, that we have this, we're passing it on, a stewardship. And it is about making, I suppose, the world a better place for everybody, for every individual and every child and adult. And I guess that was part of the subject of today. And while I don't expect you to have learned them off, but what is it that gets you out of bed in the morning in terms of feeling, well, in my small way, I'm contributing to that. I'd love to capture a little bit of that for our people, because I believe we can make a difference in our small way, and if all of us want to do, strive to do that, well then maybe there'll be a wave of, making a difference. So do any of you feel inspired to kind of try and answer that?
So the one that jumped out at me on the list was reducing inequalities, but then I would add to that reducing inequities, because in the working with the patients that I do, it's not simply enough to say, I'm going to give you the same as every other 45-year-old. Many of the people that I work with are, not only do people who are experiencing homelessness die decades younger than their age peers, their medical needs are very different. Their, the impact of the life that they've had has had very serious impact. So, I suppose recognising inequity whilst working on inequality, and also not assuming that we know what's best for everybody just because we've had a certain type or level of education. So I suppose what I've learned over time, and particularly I think through some of the jobs that I've ended up in, but also my psychotherapy training, is focusing less on doing things to people, certainly not rescuing people. It's that's a very good way of keeping people down when they're already feeling down, but asking the best quality question of the person, hopefully at the right time, because most people know what they need, and it's maybe more about spending a bit of extra time in order to help the person access the smallest step to make the biggest step forward that's possible.
I love that, and we've got so much to talk about after this. I'm really glad we've done this panel together. Definitely, reduced inequalities or inequities. I prefer that tweak. And there's gender equality. There's eliminating poverty. There's so many things. Equality, diversity, inclusion, and the Sustainable Development Goals go hand in hand. But for me, we're very fortunate at M2 that we actually have the UNESCO chair. Catherine Carty is the project manager out in Kerry, and so she is very passionate about the global goals. But she impressed upon me when I first started that diversity and inclusion, or the global goals, are not an optional add-on, that we've got a public sector duty in higher education as a public body, that we have a responsibility to prepare the next generation. And so that quality education, I think number 5, but the quality education is key, because she made it so clear to me that it's not an optional add-on, it's not a nice to have that people tackle inequality in society, because if we don't prepare the next generation of students to tackle inequality wherever they see it, we're perpetuating the status quo, and we're saying it's okay for things to stay as they are. So there's an obligation on us as educators, as professionals in higher education, to make sure quality education means breaking down those barriers for everyone to achieve their full potential.
Thanks,
Mine is very straightforward. Mine is to clean and affordable energy, because I'm working in the energy supply chain. So that is one, of course, like all our cross-cutting issues that we address. But at the same time, I feel that I'm making a difference. Like, this event is because we are witnessing right now all the conflicts that exist, how we are dependent on fossil fuels, how geopolitical issues arise because of something that we haven't changed. So now we have the opportunity to change. Now I'm doing my job, and it is my vocation, and I share that vocation as well with all my peers and colleagues there, to reach clean and affordable energy.
Thank you.
And I suppose for us in the pharmaceuticals, it's kind of hard to tackle one on its own, but I definitely feel as if manufacturing those products and making people's lives better by manufacturing them in a cleaner way, more sustainable way, there's definitely goals and implementations such as clean energy. We have our own kind of wind turbine out in Ringaskiddy, and I know other sites of Johnson & Johnson are definitely striving for that, sustainable clean energy in terms of kind of the workplace and making that difference, because we are dealing with patients who are sick and making those drugs for patients who are sick. You're also looking at, the equality and the equity and making sure that everyone is very much inclusive in the company that we work for, as well as dealing with everyone outside of the company as well. So I would say in companies like that, it almost ties in as a whole rather than just one specific one. And it's great to be working for a company like that where you can see not just one UN sustainable, or what are they called again?
Sustainable Development Goal.
There we go. Sorry. But yeah, so it's great to kind of work for a company where those values and those goals are kind of met on a daily basis. And when you sit down at the end of the day, you're kind of look at the bigger picture, and you're thinking to yourself that, wow, we're actually helping people out there, and we're trying to do it in the best way possible and the cleanest way possible.
Thank you.
And
Thanks,
if
Paulina.
I may add something there, because I know that we come from companies and we are a diverse group here with planners, with education, but coming from a company and companies who care and companies who employ people, it's also contributing to economic growth, which is another of the SDGs. So I think that all dots that get connected, like you said, are a great addition as well to sharing this experience. So
Thank you. So we've got a few minutes left. Does anyone, there's no pressure, does anyone have anything else to say, or has it been, sometimes we express something for each other sometimes, so there's no compulsion to say something if you don't want. No? Yeah. We might have time for one more question, and then we've about 5 or 6 minutes left, 5 minutes, and we'll try and stick to the time. So.
Hi, and thank you for being panelists. It's been great, and to hear so many different people from so many different aspects of different sectors talking about different issues. I suppose I have one question for the alumni. As an alumni, when choosing a postgraduate way of looking at education, I'll be asking the exact same question to other panelists from the other side of the aisle, as I like to call them. If you were to recommend postgrad, why would you recommend to an undergrad going to postgrad? Why would you recommend a taught postgrad in the future and not a research-based one?
Oh, so mine was definitely taught. Okay, I just want to make that very clear. Mine was definitely a taught master's, and I have so much respect for people who've done research masters or research PhDs, because that takes so much discipline. So yeah, I definitely would recommend starting with taught programs. And actually, the one thing I was going to add is I'm also doing a postgrad cert here at the moment at UCC. So like it never ends. But also, so I think that is an option to look at, the postgraduate certificate, if you are then going to follow it on with a research master's. I'm now looking, because I'm so a glutton for punishment, I'm now looking at a master's in organisational psychology, which kind of brings them both together, because it's a 2-year, or if you do a part-time, 1 semester is, or 1 year is taught, but then the following year is research. So I'm slowly, eventually going to get that PhD, but I'm doing it in the most long, drawn-out, taught, painful way possible. But yeah, highly recommend taught as an introductory way of doing it.
Anyone else?
Did you do
want to answer
taught
that
or
question
research?
before we-
You did both? Yeah. Did anyone do full research, or anyone do?
So your question was
taught.
recommending a taught postgrad over a research.
And I'll ask the other panelists, whoever's done research, about the research.
Yeah, well, we'll be hearing about the experience of research in a moment.
that I would add there, that I'm going to swap your question, because I think that first thing to do is to read the program, what you are going to do. Like I know that it's a basic recommendation, but to me it helped me, because I didn't know about the Irish system. I didn't know where I wanted to go. Like I did business, but I was working with international cooperation. All I knew is that I wanted to do something meaningful for the world. That was it. And that I wanted to do it in an English-speaking country. How I found it was because I was like, okay, I want to do policy, and I want to make an impact, and I want to link it to an international environment. And that's how you kind of land what you want to do, either research or a taught master's. Now my sister, she likes to read, she likes to do research, she likes to dig in things. So she's going for a PhD now. And
yes,
it's something that at the moment I'm not there yet.
Yeah. And you don't have to be, that's the thing. I mean, I think if you have an opportunity to do a research dissertation, you know, in your final year, that's often, you know, if you're really electrified by that and kind of very much motivated, that's often an indicator, you know, of, and that's something that, again, as a career service, that we can talk about and help you just, even as a sounding board, to kind of get clear on what's best for you. I am very aware of time, and I'm very aware that some of you may still have something to say. If there's anything for 1 or 2 or 3 minutes, people who haven't spoken as much, or feel that that there is something that they did want to share, we'll take a moment to do that, and then we will close this part of the chapter. And thank you very, very much. So just before we close, is there anything here that someone thinks, oh, I wish I had actually shared that?
Sorry, we've completely kept the microphone on this side. Sorry about that. I was just going to reflect back to your question there as well. It depends what kind of a learner you are too. You have to definitely look at that, because if you are, like Vanessa said, if you are disciplined and you're able to kind of stay on top of your game and, you know, sit down and do that research yourself. I'm not one of those learners. Like, I needed to be I would say spoon-fed wouldn't be the word, but actually sat down in a lecture or online, because half of mine was online, unfortunately, because of COVID. But yeah, like, it depends what your kind of strong suits are, and definitely pick one that you like, that you are actually going to enjoy. You're going to sit down and you're not going to dread going to lectures, because there's definitely people out there that have started something and have dropped out, but if you pursue something you love, you'll definitely stick with it and you're going to like it.
Thank you. That's really sound advice. Thank you very much. I'd like to thank all of you. I certainly have been very inspired listening to you. And I guess it's really reinforced that belief that, we can all make some difference, and we can, in our own way, try and make this world for ourselves, planet, and ourselves as individuals, as groups, in every country. We can try and make things better. And I think it's been really inspiring to hear how that's been your trajectory with each one of you. So we'll take a moment and we will ask you to maybe join the rest of the group, and we will ask our PhD graduates, our alumni, to continue the chat. So I think we will continue in the same structure, and we just keep flowing. I would like to thank you again for coming, and I'm really, really excited to hear your stories. So maybe you might start by introducing yourself briefly, saying a little bit about yourself, your background, what you do, and then we will hand over to the group. So will we start here? Because I'm looking at you, you're the closest. Okay. So maybe introduce yourself and your background, your academic background, your research, and maybe where you are at the moment.
No problem.
In your role.
I'm Mark O'Sullivan. I'm a lead investigator in the Infant Centre, which is a research group out of the maternity hospital in Cork University Hospital, and I suppose a multidisciplinary group between engineers, clinicians, scientists. Started with a background in electronic engineering that I did my undergrad here in UCC. Went on to do a master's, I suppose a taught master's, to be clear, since that's kind of topic of the conversation. Went on to do a taught master's, and kind of following out from the end of the taught master's, went into a PhD. So the taught master's was in CIT, or now MTU, and then I came back here to do a PhD with the Infant Centre. That took about 4 years, then stayed on as a postdoc for a couple of years, and I suppose while doing my postdoc work was trying to apply for funding to get my own grants, and now luckily enough I'm in a position where we have our own funding to pursue the line of research that I started doing for my PhD, and now towards the end of kind of the academic journey, one foot out the door, looking to commercialise IP and to bring out a spin out. So I'm slowly moving away from engineering more towards the commercial world. So that's in a nutshell me. And I suppose just a bit of background on the research is developing medical devices for newborn brain injury detection. So electronics, machine learning, software kind of all bundled into one device, and overall goal of trying to improve detection of brain injuries.
Thank you. Thanks, Mark.
My name is David Goulding, and thanks for the invite. And I studied an undergrad in nutritional sciences here in UCC, and following that I did a PhD in the area of food and nutritional sciences, and I now work for Nestlé Nutrition. So I lead a science and technology team where we develop a lot of the early science and early technological solutions to ensure that infant nutrition products, toddler nutrition products are really being upgraded with the most cutting edge science on a continuous basis. And yeah, that's about it. Talk more soon.
Thanks, David.
Great. Hi all, I'm Martin Davern. So I'm Executive Director of the Sexual Health Centre. It's an NGO just behind the Mercy Hospital. It's our responsibility to provide support, education and advice, testing opportunities to people in relation to their sexual health or healthy relationship needs. I started off my time in UCC with the School of Public Health, so I have a degree in Public Health and Health Promotion and a Master's in Public Health, and an opportunity came up to do a PhD. And I really like this idea of translating theory into practice. So after the PhD, it seemed like a natural fit for me to move into the community sector, and that's what I did.
My name is Niamh O'Mahony, and I did a PhD in chemistry. I did my undergraduate in chemistry at forensic science and then went straight into a PhD in analytical chemistry. But I've kind of switched research fields in the last 8 months, and I now work in researching education. So I work in UCC as a postdoctoral researcher on micro-credentials, and will start another postdoctor in the summer. In equipping, I suppose, the university landscape for neurodiverse education in STEM.
Thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm Karen O'Callaghan. I did undergraduate in food science here in UCC. Then straight afterwards I went in to do a research PhD, again staying in the food science area, so I was in smart packaging technologies for food. After that I worked in consultancy R&D for a couple of years, and most recently now I'm working as a dairy flavour scientist in Synergy Flavours out of the innovation sector, which is based out of Ballymena and Cork.
Hi everyone, my name is James Lawler. I suppose my background, I studied English literature and new medias for my undergrad in UL. I went on to do a master's in English in Queen's and University of Belfast, kind of focused on Irish culture and Irish literature. And then I worked, when I finished my degree, or my master's degree in 2010, it was in the middle of the recession. I just did a lot of internships in community development and got a lot of experience in that world for 3 or 4 years. And I ended up working in the Department of Taoiseach for a year, but I kind of missed the world of kind of research, and I missed the world of academia. Like, I liked what I was doing, but was I passionate about the track that I had gone in? So I went back and I did a PhD here in UCC in the School of English, and I did it. My research area was the Great Book of Ireland, which was a manuscript that was created in the 80s. So it was kind of Irish poetry, Irish visual art. And while I was doing that, I got involved in a project, kind of a student well-being program that I'm now director of, and we have a staff of 4. It's a program called Narrative 4, and we teach empathy skills, social emotional learning using evidence-based tools, and we replicated a model that was in the US. So that's what I've been doing for the last 8 years.
Great. Thank you. Wow, so interesting and diverse. First of all, you've kind of got the hang of it now. Who has a question? Would anyone like? I've got plenty of questions to ask, but would anyone like to start with a question?
Yeah, like I eventually want to do a PhD. Eventually, not like immediately. But one of the things that would,
One of the things that would put me a little bit off is like it's 3 years, so it's a long time. How did you cope with that, or do you have any recommendation to embark upon the PhD journey? And how fulfilled have you felt afterwards?
I suppose I'm fresh out of UCC, so I suppose it makes sense for me to talk about that one. I just graduated in October. So I suppose the first thing to say about it, I know you kind of referred to your studies as being a student. I wouldn't say being in a PhD you feel like a student. I'm not sure if the rest of you kind of, it does feel a bit more like a job. You're going in to do your job every day. Technically you're a student, you kind of bridge that line of being like a worker and a student kind of staff. First thing I would say is don't go in thinking it's 3 years. It could be longer, it could be shorter, but maybe longer. That would be the first warning. But I suppose you need to feel comfortable in the kind of area of study. I think that's the most important thing. You need to find something that you enjoy, or that you know will lead to the right thing that you'll enjoy in your career or in your life, or maybe you just want doctor in front of your name. I know some people do PhDs just for that. So I suppose it's looking into the options that are out there, talking to the right people. So like talk to the lecturers, talk to your supervisors, make sure it's like an informed decision, because there's no doubt it's a massive decision, particularly if you want to do it full-time coming from a work environment. But of course there's part-time opportunities. I think it's kind of like 6 years-ish for a part-time one. And then obviously there's funding too. So many kind of things to look into, but find something that you love and make sure you're willing to invest whatever length of time it will take to get there.
Thank you. Thanks, Niamh. I guess I'd like to, just to make sure that we get to hear certain things, I'm going to jump in again, but I'd really like again to hear, I suppose, particularly the rewards, that kind of thing that gets you up out of bed feeling, you know, some days are hard at work, but actually this is something that I feel good about. I mean, it makes a difference. So maybe what are the rewards, the things that come to mind of your work? We can start randomly or whichever way, whoever wants to start. So David.
Start, yeah. A big reward for me is being able to apply science. So I studied science. It was a research postgrad, and when you're in the academic setting, sometimes things can feel a bit abstract, or like you're very much zoning into some scientific question sometimes, and the end use or the translation of that science into something purposeful and useful and valuable may not be so clear. But I think I really feel rewarded about the application of my science now, because I pretty much do that every day at the moment. And in my job, it really couldn't be more rewarding, I think, because like the type of nutritional solutions that we develop, they're for infants and toddlers who usually can't be breastfed for some reason. And it's probably one of the most vulnerable population groups that you have. And there's preterm solutions, and there's solutions for infants that may not be, that might be like lactose intolerant, or might need some like anti-reflux formulas and stuff like this. So really being able to provide those solutions all across the world, like going back to the inequality aspects earlier as well, like reaching people in all sorts of socioeconomic situations. The application of science is very rewarding. So I'm very pleased with that for myself.
Thanks, David.
I suppose in terms of rewards, I think probably a little touching on your question as well. Like I think of the PhD as a poorly paid job, but a poorly paid job that you get to guide your own path that you go, which I think is just, I with a pinch of salt, I've never worked in industry, but you get to completely guide what you do and where you go, which I think is the main reward. And I think the sense of ownership with what you get at the end of it, whether that's a paper, whether that's insignificant finding, whether it's significant findings, being able to own your own work and kind of say, that took me a year, but we got there. I think that's the main reward, is the kind of sense of ownership of what you do, and kind of a bit of pride in what you've done. And in terms of the work, I guess working with preemie babies, is it mainly? Yeah. I mean, in my case, I went into the PhD not really knowing. I suppose the attraction for me into the PhD was more the technical field. I hadn't been to a neonatal ICU before, didn't have much knowledge about the field. So I kind of started into it from the technical perspective, but the minute that I got to see the neonatal ICU, it just put everything into perspective, and then you obviously kind of grow towards the rewards of seeing some of those patients, thinking you're going to be able to help them. That's obviously a massive reward in itself. But yeah, I think I suppose pushing towards those goals and having something at the end of it, and I think similar for yourself, I suppose being applications oriented at the end of it, starting with something, ending up with something that can actually be put into practice is a great reward.
Thank you. Karen.
Firstly, to echo, applied research is probably the biggest thing, as a researcher coming from, a scientific background. Applying your research is very validating. Personal to me, I suppose, would be that I grew up 10 minutes away from the place that I'm working in now. I never thought I'd get to apply both my undergraduate and my PhD degrees locally. And you can see all around you, like people are working in that factory. I never thought that would be me, because I thought my degree would be slightly different. So I love that I get to apply my technical degree 10 minutes away from my doorstep. So that's quite personal to me, but that really appeals to me. Yeah.
I suppose as someone who's did a PhD in a subject that I no longer kind of work in, I ended up doing my PhD because I enjoyed what I was doing, but mainly because I was good at it. I kind of knew I hadn't found my feet in what I wanted to be when I grew up, let's say. I have a family full of teachers, so I knew education was there somewhere. But I suppose my kind of next job with like neurodiverse education is probably my dream job, and I'm still kind of find it hard to believe that that job could truly exist, and to have made it exist is a really big thing. And I think the post-COVID kind of push, seeing that you can make an impact, is really amazing. And I suppose I wouldn't be able to be a postdoc without my PhD, so because of that I'm really thankful.
For me, I would totally echo what everyone said. Applying research is a really great thing, but I suppose I do it in a very different way because I'm applying it with humans to deliver a support service. So, many of the people that come into us and that need us are at a very vulnerable point in time in their lives, and they require a support service to be professional and evidence-based and have a program of support that's required in the community. We can say things like evidence-based all the time, like no one's ever going to advertise something and say it's not evidence-based. So the reality is, what does that mean for a support service? And that's what my role is. And I remember one of my PhD supervisors said at the time when I got my current role that in a leadership role, your whole job is to remove barriers for other people to get their jobs done effectively, and that's something that really sticks with me now as I move forward. So the PhD was when I think back, one of my favourite jobs, and totally resonated with me when you said you get to lead your own thing. And that never kind of happens again, after somebody else kind of pushes in on your job and you just end up having to deliver things, and the percentage of the job that is yours and fully yours reduces over time. But the PhD didn't, and I loved that. I love that about it.
Great, thank you.
I suppose if you get to spend 3, 4, 5, maybe 6 years working on something that you're passionate about, and I think that changes you really, because you're kind of a young adult and you're working on something that you're passionate about. It's a big project and you're setting your own goals. It's quite a different lifestyle than a lot of your friends who are kind of working maybe in the corporate world. And it's something that you have and you're proud of, and I think that does change you and kind of directs you in your career, that you want to work and continue to feel that kind of passion that you had for your PhD. So I think it directs you in that way, and I suppose also, like, when you move into industry, like I suppose the industry that I work in, in the charity industry, the not-for-profit industry, has that similar type of person. They're very passionate about the work that they do. It's vocational nearly, and I suppose what I kind of have brought to it is that kind of research experience. And what really excites me about my role is bringing and creating opportunities for researchers to come in and research the program that we've developed, that we run in Ireland, and that's been kind of exciting, kind of forming partnerships, and we have a few journal articles coming out about the process of this kind of process in the classroom, of this thing called the story exchange, which builds kind of positive relationships. And we've a journal article coming out that shows that it improves the relationship between the teacher and students, which was kind of something that we hadn't considered kind of starting off, but the researcher had kind of discovered as they were doing it. So that's kind of something that I enjoy, kind of creating research potential for other researchers now, and kind of understanding that world of research and academia, and being able to bring that into this third sector that I work in.
Thank you. Very, very inspiring to hear so many, one individual and the ripples of change and impact that each of you has. Does anyone have a question? Yeah?
Hi there, I'm Aaron Dixon. I'm a current PhD student, so I look forward to being somewhere here eventually. I'm entering my fourth year now, and one thing I've been told throughout my entire PhD is doing a lot of extracurricular stuff in order to kind of further your kind of researcher career. Maybe I do a little bit too much stuff, but after graduating, have you found that extracurricular stuff has affected your career, or did you find that it was a positive aspect? Because you can spend a lot of time doing stuff extracurricular, and was it worth it essentially if you did anything?
I might just answer that kind of quickly. I was one of those people, I suppose, that took on a project and ended up, like, I'm still working for that project. And on reflection, and I was talking with Deirdre in the careers service, she was kind of asking me, would you do it all again, even though I'm working in the area? And I said, no, if I could go back, I think I would just focus on the PhD. Because it's so easy. I think our minds wander, like when you're kind of working on the same topic, you do look for distractions. And everyone said to me, you'll find distractions. And I did. And looking back now, because it took me, like it took me long, like I don't even, like it was around 6 years doing the PhD, and I was like, I wish I got it done in 3, because I could have got that experience then, you know, on the 4th year, or you know, out in the world. So yeah, like I would, if I could advise someone, I would say, yeah, just focus on the PhD. Even the teaching experience, everyone is telling you it's great to get teaching experience. You'll get it after, you know.
I actually have the opposite experience. I suppose if I didn't do everything, I had my hand in every pot, I suppose, when I was doing my PhD, and if I didn't do that, I wouldn't be in the job I'm in now. So it kind of depends on what you see yourself becoming or being. I know Mary Regan runs the Odyssey programme here in UCC. It's fantastic if anyone has the opportunity to do that. But she said, I remember in her like one-to-one session, she was like, okay, so you have a level 10 degree now. What about the rest of your CV? You're going to spend the rest of your life trying to bring the rest of your CV up to that level 10 degree. So what are you going to do? So I suppose I kind of kept that in my mind after doing that. So I suppose it depends. I was also one of the lucky ones. My science worked, and I did get out within 4 years. So I suppose it's easy for me to say that. But yeah, I suppose it's working out what suits you.
And I would just echo that. So I was the very same as you. I got involved in everything because in some ways I wasn't really sure what I wanted my future career path to be. I really enjoyed my PhD. It was on alcohol use among the university student population. It was a really interesting topic, so I didn't even blink getting into it. But I was like, what will I do with this at the end? So the opportunity to get involved in different things opened up opportunities for me later on. And I mightn't have seen them in the initial job I took, because I took up a lecturing post immediately afterwards, and I was involved in a network thereafter within the university. But I've used them all eventually, you know, so it might become apparent straight away, but they're all skills that you'll have, and you're able to talk about in an interview, and you're able to bring up and showcase how you, even if it's how you can multitask. It's a great example of that.
Equally agree about the kind of rounding yourself as best as you can. But I think it's very interesting actually the way, like, I think it could be misinterpreted as well with what you actually said first of all, because just focusing on the PhD could actually also mean that you round yourself, because I find daily that I get a bit surprised about some of the skills I developed during that period when I thought I was focusing on my PhD. You're developing project management skills, like multitasking and stuff. You're learning how to research. You're presenting yourself, your work. You're communicating science in my case, or whatever your work is. You're writing, and if you're the type of person who thrives off focusing on your PhD, just be aware that maybe you actually are probably developing more skills than you might think. But yeah, it's case by case, I think, as in whatever makes you tick and whatever that you enjoy doing. Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much the same. You do need to manage your time is one thing, but I think if there's something that you feel like is dragging you in the right direction, I'd say take that nudge. In my case, I'd say in coming near the end of second year PhD, I kind of got a grow for kind of the presenting side of things and pitching, and that led me into the Gateway program, which led me into Ignite and the different entrepreneurship programs, and that's now the career that I'm pursuing. So I think definitely having your hands in different pots is good, but you know, I suppose try and see if it ties in some way to your PhD. It doesn't have to necessarily be an output, it doesn't have to be co-authorship or paper, but just as long as it's rounding out the PhD or informing it, I think it's, yeah.
Thank you. I guess for me that's prompted that question about the skills, because some of you have naturally brought that in and talked about the skills that you've acquired from your PhD. Are there other things that you can think of that I'm asking each of you, I suppose, individually, in terms of the skills that you have acquired and developed and refined and strengthened from your PhD that are now things that are a daily kind of asset now, are that really have helped you develop professionally and personally? Are there other skills that you'd like to share with others that you can think of?
I think I should be an introvert. I'm an engineer, and I definitely was coming into it. But I think throughout the PhD, you're encouraged to present, you're encouraged to get out in front of audiences. I think encouraged to be vocal, and that's certainly not something I would have had coming into the PhD program, and it's something coming out of it that has kind of guided my career. And I think it was mentioned earlier in terms of LinkedIn and just being out there. I think it's definitely a sector where being an opportunist is very fruitful. I think, kind of giving cliches is kind of one where shoot your shot type thing. Kind of make your own look, I think, to a certain extent. So yeah, that's kind of just skills. I think the main thing that kind of has guided my career is developing those social and interpersonal skills, despite being in a lab for 4 years.
Okay.
One extra thing maybe just to add would be that I find daily now that like my PhD years would have helped me to juggle lots of things, prioritize, and so like in my day job I manage a team, but I also have like a lot of my own objectives, and I really need to be able to juggle lots of things, lots of variety. Sometimes a challenge I have is actually focusing on the important thing on that day, but I think a real skill that can be underrated is juggling, and I think that's just it's part of every PhD. Like, you might have a couple of chapters on the go at the one time. You might be doing one chapter but have to teach, or you might have to write, or juggling.
Okay.
Writing as part of communication, I think, was a big thing. When you started off, I was writing and getting a lot of edits back every time a paper went to a supervisor, but that's something that really sticks with you, because you learn as time goes on how to improve your writing and how to improve your communication in general, because with all communication there's a sender and a receiver, so you have to make sure that the receiver is receiving that correctly, and you'd use that in everything from job applications to every day in your job, to any communication that you have to do. So that was one of the things that I found that I still honed, I suppose, in my PhD, and I'm still working on now.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that kind of like reviewer lens that you develop, like being able to kind of be like floating over your work and decide on it, like view it through someone else's eyes, I suppose, basically. And I suppose I'm a different person to when I started my PhD. I suppose I've grown up doing my PhD, but it also gives you the space to kind of find yourself. Like, you're kind of self-employed for like whatever many years you're there. Like, someone's paying you. Your supervisor's not really your boss. They're kind of like your mentor. They're your guide. And it probably is the reason a lot of people do spin outs from their research, is because they've experienced the kind of independence of like being a researcher. I suppose the space to grow is the biggest thing I think I got from my PhD, and the transferable skills from that.
Yeah, everything that everyone else has said, but I think for me anyway, you become a champion of something, and that's something that I take, project management is something that I do every day, and you're driving your project, you drive your PhD, no one's going to do that PhD for you. So you just become, you take ownership, and you just become a champion. And I think that's something not everyone has in industry, especially my industry, is that they take ownership on something. So it's definitely something I gained from doing a PhD.
Yeah, I suppose it's just like project management. Like, no project that you're going to manage will feel as big as a PhD. So no matter what you take on, you can break it down into tasks. And one of the things I learned in the PhD, I suppose, is to celebrate the small goals when you meet them. And I wasn't doing that at the start. And some of my friends who were doing their PhD at the same time, we weren't doing that. And something you learn yourself probably a year and a half in, that you need to celebrate. You get that chapter in, you need to have it written up on the wall. You need to tick it off that list. And I know it sounds simple, but any project you take on if it's a big project particularly, you need to, have the goals and celebrate the goals as you achieve them. If you come, anyone that does a PhD runs into difficulty, and then it's fine when you find the solution, celebrate that. And I think it's a way of setting goals for yourself that you're able to say, oh no, I did well on that, or I improved on that, or I came up with a great solution for that. And that really, I suppose, those problem solving skills are something that it has given me, that I brought into my career, that I think I'll have for life. And it's something that it's the biggest thing actually I've taken from my PhD, I think.
Wow, thank you. Any questions? Yes?
So thank you so much for sharing, so inspiring. Right now, I'm also a PhD student in UCC, and I think some of you mentioned about postdoctoral experience. So my question is, to do a postdoctoral after a PhD or directly go for a faculty position or join the industry, when you face this kind of question, what factors do you think are important to consider? Yeah, that's my question. Thank you.
In terms of going into postdoc, I do think it's worth doing a year or two. It depends, obviously, completely case by case, but I think a lot of people find that in their first year or year and a half of postdoc, in terms of publications, it's a very rewarding period, because I think there's so many things that you leave half finished throughout your PhD, or at least in my case I did. And then the postdoc, you kind of have you're kind of upskilled already at that stage. You know how to write papers quicker, how to get them out quicker. So I think it's, if you're looking for outputs, it's a good kind of year and a half, 2 years to do, in my opinion, because I think you'll get probably more journal papers in that 2 years than you will in the 4 years of your PhD. So just something to consider. But like, obviously, if there's fields in industry that you think it's whatever interests you most, I suppose, and the reality is as well is getting postdoc contracts are difficult. They're usually short term. But if there's something that comes up that you think you can balance the two, and it's in the field that you've done your PhD, and it's definitely worth considering.
Thank you.
I think it's case by case, because for me, I loved my PhD right up till the end, really, really energized, and I never lost motivation. I persisted right to the end. But for me, I really felt that academia wasn't something that I was going to do. And for that reason, I kind of treated my PhD as like, I knew I had to have an exit plan, right? So like, if you're on the fence, or if you're leaning towards like an academic type setting, then postdoc is 100% something that you should go and try and achieve. But don't be afraid to have an exit plan as well, and go out into the bad world and get to the private industry if you want. So case by case.
Thank you. Anyone else have anything to say there? No pressure at all? Thanks.
And thank you so much for your time, everyone, and I think congratulations to you all on the incredible impact you're making. I suppose I'm a member of staff here in UCC and often work with postgraduate students who either don't want to go into a PhD because they're feeling imposter syndrome, or it's a barrier to them as they're progressing. And I think it comes from that idea of, when you're a PhD student, you're ambitious, you're a high achiever, you've probably been that way your whole life, and there's a level of expectation on you. So I wanted to ask if any of you have ever experienced that imposter syndrome, and if so, how did you kind of overcome it?
I suppose, for me, I definitely would have felt a little bit of imposter syndrome, but it was more so I got recommended to do a PhD. I didn't know what a PhD was. No one in my family had ever gone to university before, so I had to go and ask the question, what is a postgraduate? So people are telling you, this might suit you, but that question earlier of should you do it or not? Firstly, you have to have an interest in the area. I knew I loved research. I was lucky enough to do my placement in research, so I knew I wanted to research regardless. I suppose the next question was it going to help my career later on? So I knew those were two questions I could answer for definite. Whether or not I could do it, I didn't know, but I had a good support system, thankfully, around me that, my supervisor, other lecturers, classmates, other people doing postgrads who were
you know, no, you can do this. And then eventually, for me, there was a bit of a switch when it was like, you know, this is my work, you know. So like there definitely was a bit of, am I in the right place here? But I don't think, you know, if you get the advice going into it, if people think, you know, you're capable of doing it, if, you know, you have an interest. I always say that anyone can do a postgrad, anyone can do a master's, anyone can do PhD, but you have to be interested and you have to drive it. Like, so, yeah, like there's definitely imposter syndrome there, but I think it all depends on the person and how much you're willing to, you know, see this through. Yeah.
I just have something very small to say, I suppose. Something I noticed when I was doing my PhD was like, oh, you must be so smart to be doing a PhD. And like, that is absolutely categorically not the case. It's all about hard work. Like, completely, it all comes down to how much you're willing to push yourself, how much you're willing to push the boundaries, and like, it's all based on your work ethic, really, in my experience anyway.
I suppose one thing as well for people who are thinking about doing a PhD but a bit kind of on the fence is going back to what someone was saying earlier about so someone said start with a taught master's, right? You could also start with a taught or with a research master's, because I think everyone here probably starts as a research master's anyway, and you have your like your end of year review after year one to make sure that you can progress to year two, and maybe at the end of year two it might be a case of, okay, have I enough now to finish with a master's, or do I proceed to a PhD? So it's not like you don't have to commit to this big journey at the start either, so keep that in mind for anyone who's thinking about doing a research-based postgrad.
Very good. Thank you.
To anyone who went to industry and then went back to do a postgraduate diploma, or not diploma, a PhD, did you struggle going back? Because in my mind, I feel like you're in the real world, in the corporate world, you're earning, and then you're going back into essentially being a broke student for 4 years. So I'm just wondering, do you have struggles like that, or do you know anyone that did?
So after my undergrad, I worked for about a year with Nestle, and I went, and my postgrad was funded by Nestle, so I made that jump to be paid and then to go back to being poor, and it was different for sure. But I think at the time I convinced myself that, oh well, okay, I'm not paying for this really. I'm getting paid. Okay, I'm getting paid pretty much nothing, but I'm getting paid. So having the money coming the right way, albeit small, was also a little bit of something to cling on to. So, but for sure, anyone who's doing a PhD, you don't expect to be flush for that time, because it's not going to happen. But I think I had no problem adjusting my way of living to that. I think even beforehand we were chatting, we were saying that we even felt that we might have had more money back then. But so I don't know, does other people have the same feelings, or?
Yeah, I definitely would. And the other thing I just add to that is you're in a situation where all of your peers are in the same boat, so everyone feels the very same. No, you know, everyone's on the same pittance, and so nobody's doing anything, or they found something free, so it's fine.
I suppose I have a question that I'd like to ask you again that I asked earlier, and it's around the Sustainable Development Goals. And don't get a fright that you can't recite every single one of them. But I guess, is there anything there from, around Sustainable Development Goals that resonates with you, that you feel in a meaningful way is something that you are contributing, or, linking in with and making some small difference? And it would be really nice to hear your comments on
that. I'll start. So I suppose for an organisation like ours, we're working towards ending inequalities, but I also think one of the important ones for us is number 17, which is around working in partnership with others. So I think in order to achieve any of the Sustainable Development Goals, it really requires kind of joined up thinking and collaborative working. And that's a very important aspect of the work that we do. So that'll be it for me.
Thanks, Martin.
Most of them I can relate to on a daily basis because, like, in my day job, I need to partner with other people to achieve the job. I think something that's a bit weird for me at the moment is that in some ways I'm at the other side of the table for PhDs or even masters at the moment, because the group that I lead, we fund and we sponsor lots of postgrads. So I find like that investment in education and developing people, I think that really does, it improves our economy, our country, and I really do. I can see it right before my eyes that's one aspect of sustainability. Yes, that's definitely one. Education, infrastructure, just stuff like that.
Thanks.
Yeah, so for me it's the health and well-being goal. Obviously, looking at newborn healthcare. In particular, it's a field where there's a lot of health inequity. There's about 2% of babies in low and middle income countries suffer brain injury at birth. In the developed world, you're looking at 0.2%. So it's a massive disparity there. Initially starting the PhD, that was the whole concept, is can we create low cost, widely usable, non-specialist medical devices. So that's kind of one particular that's kind of shone through. Just one kind of point of interest, I guess, coming towards this side of the PhD and the spin out side. At this stage, dealing with a lot of corporate and I suppose venture capitalists and investors. I think I probably kind of part of the imposter syndrome thing, but overcompensated, went the other way and was like, right, I have to spend my life inside an Excel sheet. It has to all be about the finances because they don't care about the problem side. I'd say the most common feedback that I end up getting from industry and from investors is if you're presenting to investors, you should be 80% on the problem, because you can change the technology you're going to develop, you can change your business model, but the problem that you're trying to solve is the problem. So I think it's just interesting that I kind of assumed that industry would be less inclined to focus on the SDG side of things, whereas in reality I think people understand that if there's problems in the world, that's kind of the thing to focus on.
Okay, great. Thank you.
I suppose my one's pretty obvious. I'm an educational researcher working in UCC, so quality education is probably the one that is most applicable to me. But as someone who works, I suppose, in EDI and inclusive and accessible education, the gender equality and reducing inequalities is also very important. So just kind of, I suppose, equity and levelling the playing field is something that kind of resonates with me a lot.
So Carberry would have a very strong sustainability agenda. There's Carberry and Synergy, which have sites worldwide, and there's representatives that have 5 strategic pillars that work in supply chain, market, community, people and the environment. So in Carberry itself, there's obviously lots of work being done with Farm Zero C, and there's energy teams and sustainability teams that are working all on that environmental side and are much more better placed to talk about that sort of stuff. I suppose personal to me, it's responsible consumption and production. I work in Dairy Taste, and Dairy Taste is essentially creating flavours from dairy products. So Carberry take in the milk and all the streams that are coming off of that. That's how we create our flavours, so nothing goes to waste, everything has value. So I really enjoy working in that circular bioeconomy.
Yeah, with Narrative 4, we work towards the health and well-being, and how we do that is train teachers to run programs with young people that kind of create authentic connections and teach kind of social and emotional skills. And I suppose a lot of the work we do in Ireland, because we've the program also runs in South Africa, Mexico, United States, Nigeria. Is with DESH schools, because I suppose research tells us that if you attend a DESH school, you're less likely to learn social emotional skills outside of a school setting. So DESH schools have a particular responsibility and awareness of teaching kind of social emotional skills in their schools. So we provide kind of programs for the teachers and kind of training and refresher courses and how to deliver programs based on kind of circle work and things that we do for very young kids, what we do for teenagers. It's going back to basics. It's just getting them to express their experiences, to share their experiences with others, and realise, I suppose, that they're not the only they're not the only young person to experience like feeling like an outsider or feeling bereavement, and allowing them to express that. So health and well-being is something that we think about daily, and we're trying to implement it in schools across Ireland. We've a network of 800 teachers across Ireland in our network.
And then that's a lot of children, 800 teachers multiplied by a class. Thank you very much. It's been really inspiring and humbling at the same time. Really inspiring. We have space for maybe one more question. I know it's
Actually, I have a
late.
question, if you don't mind, Mary.
Okay.
You've all been through your PhD journey. You're all very successful in your careers. Did you ever feel on your journey that you hit a wall? And if you did, how did you get through it or over it?
Definitely doing a PhD, you have to embrace failure. You're going to fail and you're going to make mistakes. I think outside a PhD, even that's going to happen as well. That's life. Things pop up. And I think it's just embrace and try and learn from the mistakes, learn from failure. That's I think someone actually mentioned earlier about being ashamed for different reasons. If you're in a different environment, it might take you longer to kind of get accustomed to something, but don't worry about it. Just embrace it, learn from it, and and just stay confident and focus and persist. I think anyone who does a PhD, it's just they really have had to persist. So embrace failure.
That's a great piece of advice. Thank you. Okay. Thank you very much. We've come to the end. It's 7 o'clock, so thank you. I really appreciate it. Thank you for your time.